Welcome, Lorraine. We are live, and I'm Dr. Kate Bartram Brown. And yet again, I have found even more amazing people in my circle of friends and colleagues, and the lovely Lorraine is joining us today. And just a little bit of background about Lorraine. Now, Lorraine and I met quite some years ago, and she has a fascinating story, which I'm going to get her to share with you. But this week is especially special for Lorraine, and she's going to explain why, because Lorraine is heavily involved in supporting people that have had transplants, but also waving the flag and trying to educate us on being a donor. And Lorraine and I met in the mystery school, and she's also a healer. So she has a very fascinating story of how she came to find the mystery school and her early life. You can tell she's very young. I mean, she looks beautiful here today. She's very young, but she's done so much. So Lorraine, would you mind explaining and giving us a bit of background of why this week is so important to you, your journey, and then how you came to be a healer, because it all intertwines.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kate, for having me on. And yeah, you're really right. This is a really special week, especially here in the UK. It's Organ Donation Week. It's where I'm an NHS ambassador for organ donation. And so what we were originally planning on this week is to go out into the community and talk more about organ donation, whether it be a specialized nurse of organ donation, we call them SNODs, or myself. I've received a kidney transplant a long time ago when I was a teenager, or even families of organ donors. We try to bring a more human face to these types of stories, because sometimes when you hear numbers, it doesn't mean a whole lot. So it's bringing that sort of humanity into organ donation. But you're very right. I had a kidney failure when I was a teenager, and I received my transplant when I was 18 years old. And there's a whole backstory as to why that happened. But in that part of my life, being very young, I just didn't really know how to handle what had happened to me. I was very lost. I was quite angry. And I came to Orange Coast College in California, where I had met a professor, Barbara Bullard, and she started to teach me a little bit more about how I spoke to myself, and how, I was always putting myself down. I always had a negative spin on myself. And it made me realize that I didn't really have to be that sort of way. And then she introduced me to her daughter, Dr. Teresa Bullard. And all I knew, I had first gotten introduced to the mystery school at that point, and all I knew is that the people in the mystery school were a little bit different. I couldn't put my finger on it, but they seemed really at peace, and I wanted to be at peace. And I was like, this must be it. This must be the way. So I said yes to everything, and it really, really changed my life. That post-traumatic stress that I was feeling, that anger and depression and feeling very detached to my body, started to go away. And that was really the start of my healing journey, healing myself, and then learning how to give it to others.
So this is fascinating, Ray, because obviously we can hear from your accent that you're from America and you're from LA, and you'd gone through this huge journey as just a very small child into your teenage years, and those years we all know are very difficult in any case, and you'd gone through that journey of of healing. And interestingly, when you found Teresa Bullard, which some of you may know from Gaia Television now, she's going on to her 4th season, I know that she did the life activation for you and you attended Empower Thyself. Now, here's the interesting thing, because shortly after that, how did you end up in London? How did you end up? Because I met you 10 years ago, so you've been here a long time. So tell us, how did that happen?
That's also very interesting. I had thought in my head, I love London. I'd love to visit. I'd like to be able to go someday. And as soon as I did the Empower Thyself class, I literally went to Teresa and I said, I think I'm going to move to London. And she's like, great. And I literally just went and applied for the visa. I found a way and I got accepted my visa was granted. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And I literally just got onto a plane with, when you're young, you don't actually think things through and you just kind of do it. I just packed a bag thinking I was going to be back in 6 months, but London became my home. It's actually where I always said I grew up, because it's where I became an adult, and it's when I actually started to become very self-reliant. But I always missed the mystery school, and I always had it on my mind at this point. So I found the mystery school community in London, and I'd say this is my team. This is my home now.
It's so fascinating, because you were what about 18 then at that thing?
I was 20. I was 20 when I joined the mystery school.
Yeah, so you were 20. So you'd been through all of that healing and all of that, all of those changes. And then, I know, let's just get on a plane and let's just go and live in London. So to me, that's amazing. So tell us, Lorraine. So what I want to know is, there are a lot of people out there, and we've talked about this before, that are going through very painful healing processes. Maybe they need a transplant. Maybe they're going through cancer. Maybe they've got, all of these life-threatening, diseases or life-threatening situations going on in their body. What advice do you have for them? What can you share with them, especially if they're of the younger age? What can you share with them, and what helped you get through everything?
That's a tough question, because looking back when I was really, really young, there was a lot of pieces of self-rejection that I was feeling, because I couldn't actually accept what was happening to me. I couldn't even say out loud at the time that I needed a kidney transplant. So the advice I'd give to my younger self is to actually think about what I need to make my life a little bit easier. Whether it be asking for more support at school, asking for more support with giving myself some breaks. I just remember my mindset at the time. I didn't want to show any weakness or show that I was actually going through a hard time. And I would say it's also reminding to be kind to yourself. And there's a lot of emotions that come with this. And to be okay with yourself having a bad day and communicating with others about what it is you need. That communication piece is really key. And it's okay to say, I'm going to step away and just rest for a little while. So I would say that would be the advice to myself.
Yeah, I think it's really, they always say, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but, we know that there's a lot of people going through what you went through right now. And so it's amazing that you are there as a support, a support and coping tool, if you like, and to share your experiences and to show that actually, you can get through it and you can come out successful and having fun in your life, and all of these different things. And I love that the NHS is taking that on board and heightening that and bringing that awareness. So what can families do? So let's say, I mean, we're going through these times now where we have COVID, of course, and so a lot of people, of course, are at more risk, let's say. So if your immune system is low, then we know that COVID, there is more of a risk. And obviously families may be very scared and frustrated and what have you. What advice or what tips can you give to the families? What support is out there for them? Who can they reach out to? Are there any particular tools such as meditation, things like that, that would help? What are your feelings on that?
That's also a really interesting question. I can see very much where the fear comes from, with a real lack of feeling like you're in control, that you feel that there's so much going on around you, and there is that need to try to control what's happening, whether it be with your loved one who is immunocompromised or has an underlying health condition, especially during the pandemic. I've always thought that your inner world will very much reflect your outer world. So in times where you don't necessarily, you can't control other people and you can't control the pandemic, but you can control yourself. So I loved what you said, starting with meditation and making sure that you, even as a family member, are setting yourself up for staying calm in a situation like this, or caring for yourself. Because being a family member of someone who is sick, or it's someone who is more at risk of the pandemic, that is very stressful, and it's a huge burden. So if you're a family member, definitely take some time, learn how to meditate. I always say meditation's a muscle. That start out with 3 minutes if you can, then up it to 5. And remember that your health, your mental health, your emotional health, your physical health are also important. And if you take care of yourself, you can take care of your loved one as well.
That's fascinating, because I know, since you've created a very successful career for yourself here in the corporate world in London. But what interests me is that, you are a healer, and those are two very different worlds. And I know that you bring meditation into your very structured corporate world as well, which is amazing. So what was the driving point behind being a healer? Why was it so important to you, and why do you feel that you have that passion to share it, in a corporate environment, etc.?
Working in some of the big staffing firms in London, it was such a grind. We were there so early in the morning, and a lot of people would skip lunch, and we would be there through the evening. So there was no time for exercise or any sort of human emotion, really. I felt I was just pushing and pushing and pushing myself. And there were some cultures that I used to work with that were very much, if tired is a weakness, you just power through. And it was a very unhealthy sort of mindset. And at least my own health experiences in the past had taught me quite early on that if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be able to perform or deliver like I need to. So I became a healer many years ago with the mystery school. And I took this time when even making sure I have the tools to keep myself going, and then being able to share it with others. And actually, that's been such a huge joy to be able to bring meditation into the workplace.
I've heard that it's got amazing results, and we've chatted in the past, and lots of people have always been scrambling to get into their half an hour meditation. What do you think that is in the corporate world? I know you said that they're busy and they're structured, but I find sometimes in the corporate world they can be very logically minded. So sometimes bringing that kind of meditation or healing energy into the corporate world, sometimes it's frowned upon. But would you say that's the same now, or would you say that's kind of changing?
It's changed a lot. There's been many CEOs in the FTSE 100 that are huge meditators. There are sports stars in the NBA that also talk about meditation. And because people in the corporate world, they want to be high performers. They want to get promoted. They want to be able to push themselves in that way. And it's just become more popular in the last couple of years. And seeing people talk about it who were really admired in the past, or are admired now, I should say, who do meditate, it's just made the conversations so much easier. And there's also been a big push on mental health in the workplace as well, which now when I say I teach meditation and I can teach it here at work, I've had people be very, very receptive and very excited to try it out.
That's amazing. And I love that you touched upon earlier about how you were saying that your inner world reflects your outer world. And so how do you feel that meditation or receiving healing or walking a path such as the mystery school, how would you say that would have an impact on somebody that is stressed at work in the corporate world, or in fact ill, or waiting for a kidney transplant or whatever? How do they relate? I mean, because some people say, oh well, I'm just going to sit down and do some breathing, that's not going to help me, or they can be quite frustrated. But what in your experience changes when we undertake this self-care or healing process and such like?
Well, in terms of self-care, like waiting for a kidney transplant, one of the major symptoms is having high blood pressure. And having high blood pressure does put a lot of stress on your heart, your kidneys, your blood vessels, and years and years and years of that stress, whether it be if you have high blood pressure in the office, if you have high blood pressure because you're waiting for an organ, it's going to have the same detrimental effect on your body. And meditation and taking this time, yes, people say, oh, it's so hard. I have so many thoughts going through my mind. I don't know how to slow down. And that's the world we live in. You just go and go and go without thinking about it. And everything is just rushing through. And that's I've had people tell me, I can't meditate. I've tried. So it is that point of relaxation that we go through, actually going through our physical body and saying out loud, relax. And we practice that over and over and over again. And that meditation muscle does develop. So if you try it once for 30 seconds without assistance, some people might be great and be able to do it right away, but it's okay if it's harder for you. And that's what I always tell the people who come and meditate with me. When you hear about the ascended masters on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, that took decades of practice. That wasn't like, I'm just great, I'm going to go on this mountain for 40 days. No. It took a long time. So what I have found is I've given people permission for it to take a little while. And if thoughts come up, that's okay. You're human. It's happened to me as well. And we go through that together. And the feedback that I've received is that, oh, I've never felt like that in my life. And when you actually go into that alpha brainwave state, you are able to learn in a much better capacity. It's actually a great way, or that brainwave state is a great way to learn languages. You can make decisions more clearly. So whether that be for your own medical health or in the office. It allows the sometimes chaos that can come into your life to not bother you as much, and you can actually separate yourself and like this is just the chaos that's going on. It's not me, it's not a reflection of me, so I'm centered, and it takes a little while, and that's okay. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's so good. I really like that, and I really like the way that you explained that this would be a beneficial for anybody. So even if if you're sick and you're waiting for a transplant, or if you're in a stressful situation, it's the same kind of environment that we're putting our body is going into. So it's going to cover a wide range of of ailments, which is fantastic. So Lorraine, what I want to talk to you about a couple of other things, and something that you touched on there about being in stressful situations and what have you. As casting your mind back to a younger you, because you had these very stressful situations in your teen years, and we have got a lot of children now going through extremely stressful situations, maybe not exactly the same, but the world is very different.
Mhm.
How can and what I see in the younger generation, and on Instagram and TikTok and all this kind of stuff, there's a lot of pressure on the younger generation in many different ways that we perhaps didn't have, or I didn't have. How would you share with what tools would be beneficial to them? What is going to help them, and why?
So, you mean in terms of the pressure that they feel from watching social media?
Yes, or yeah, yeah, and the pandemic and social media, yeah, the whole thing, really.
Okay. So, I know how important it is when you're young and when you're a teenager to be accepted by your peers and to come across as normal, and not weird, not strange, or any of those things. And I specifically remember this when I was a teenager with, going through chronic renal disease. I didn't want anybody to know because it made me weird. It made me different. But I would say when you're young, one of the things that actually also did endear me to people was bringing out my humanity when it came to having kidney disease. So even though everybody was really young, not even my friends, my teachers, my schoolmates, we all didn't have the capacity to deal with being sick or anything like that. But what we have, especially in a time that we all feel a bit more separate from one another, with being at home for a much longer time than we anticipated. It's that shared human experience and that shared feelings of loneliness or confusion or joy or friendship or wanting to be with one another. It's recognizing that sort of common feeling that we have with one another. So I would say my advice would be kind to yourself, be compassionate towards yourself when you're feeling very stressed or alone, because those around you, because we're all human, they'll be feeling the same sort of thing. And perhaps keeping that in mind could help to connect us to one another.
Yeah, I feel that's so important for the younger generation to understand, because I know, as we've talked before, and I know were very isolated perhaps at times when you were young. So I really wanted to reach out to the teenagers and the younger generation, that others have gone through similar situations, that we're all going through this together, and in that we can connect, we still have that ability to connect and not to withdraw and not to isolate, to reach out to one another. So that's fantastic. I would like to ask a little bit now about being a donor. Now, I understand, maybe I don't understand, maybe I should start off with that, is that the law could be changing so that, to become a donor, well, maybe you could explain, how do we become a donor? Why is it important? And who do we tell?
Absolutely. So the law has changed. It changed on the 20th of May of this year. It's Max and Kiera's law, which is the opt-out system in England. So Scotland is looking to do the same sort of changes in their law. Spring of next year, I don't have a date yet. But one of the things to keep in mind, the pandemic has really affected the waiting list. So in the UK, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was about 6,100 people waiting for an organ, and now it's 6,700. So this is a 5-year high, and the waiting list has increased to 5 years to wait for an organ. So it is a long time. What I've been told is that there are some misconceptions around the change in legislation that, yes, it's true. Everybody who's an adult who qualifies and has the capacity of understanding the law, it is now a presumptuous conversation, and it is presumed that you do consent to be an organ donor unless you opt out or unless you tell your family that you want to opt out. But even saying this, there were about 2,500 refusals for organ donation last year, because the number one reason is because the family did not know what their loved one wanted. So even with the change of legislation, your family is still going to be consulted no matter what. So I ask everybody to, if you do want to be an organ donor, if you want your last act on earth to be to save somebody else, tell your family. Do register to be an organ donor, because at least there's an official record. But tell your family so they're not unsure that they're making the right decision for you, because the majority of families, something like 90%, do want to do what's best for you at the time. So you'll make that easy for them. They'll know what you wanted. And one single donor can save up to 9 people. So it is a huge, huge gift.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It brought a lump in my throat then, is your last act on earth could be to save 9 other people. What a phenomenal gift. I think, please tell your family. And we live in a world where everybody reads social media, so do a post, or whatever. So all of your family, it's there, it's a record, or whatever it is. Please, if you feel that is something that you want to do, do let people know, and those closest to you, do let them know. It's so important. It's so interesting, isn't it, how in these times the pandemic have affected so many other people. It's not just people that are at risk from the actual virus itself, but the knock-on effect of that. And so I think we have to be even more mindful and more aware of just how we can help in the world, because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and hopefully we'll all be very safe and sound. But in the event that we that somebody is going to pass, then it would be great if we can make those donations. I know I certainly would. So we can have a record of that on here as well. That's definite. I've told everybody though, Lorraine, because I know your story. So I've told everybody. They know. So so that's the influence that you've had on just your personal circles. That's great. So We are coming to an end now to our interview, and I just wondered if you had any final words or passing comments to people out there on any of the topics that we've touched upon today.
Yeah, I have two. I would say, no matter what's going on in your life, the biggest lesson I've learned is to have compassion for yourself. No matter what hard times you're going through, it you can, or at least I did, fall into judgment towards yourself. So just always have that in the back of your mind, that to be compassionate to yourself, because when you do that, you have the capacity to be very compassionate to others. And also tell your family that if you want to be an organ donor, tell them. Tell them that it would be something that you want to do, and have that conversation. Make it easy for them, and listen to them as well. Ask them what they want to do. So that's my message
Thank
for this.
you so much. Yes. Now, Lorraine, I know that you are busy because you've been working through the whole pandemic. I do know that, but I also know that you're taking on some new clients, and they can, I know, get a consultation with you, and you do online meditations and things like that for people. So I'd really like to make sure that they can get in touch with you. So if you don't mind us putting your contact details in the comments, if that's okay, so that everybody can get in touch with you. And I think especially for people, that perhaps families or people that are going through the similar thing that you've been through, there are plenty of people out there. I know you had a whole journey and healing process that you went through, that I know you've shared with other clients that have come to you, and you've walked them through that whole healing process on the holistic side. And of course you have the medical, the experience of walking going through that medical healing process, as well as the holistic. So I think that intertwined is invaluable for people. So again, if you're watching this, reach out to Lorraine. She is doing consultations, and she can provide healings and sessions for you and your family. So please do get in touch with her. So Lorraine, I'll make sure all the comments go, your details go in the comments. And thank you very much for today. I feel like we're going to have a part 2, because I know there's loads more that we need to ask you and delve a little bit deeper, but I just wanted to get an overview today. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Kate. This was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye, everyone.